In this presentation, we examine correlates and predictors of growth in students' awareness of compassion. In 2006, Dr. Sharon Solloway began teaching mindfulness to students who were entering Bloomsburg University through a special door, the Act 101 EOP, Equal Opportunity Program. These students did not match the usual admissions profile due to financial, cultural, social, or educational disadvantages or disabilities. Most students in the program fit 2 or more of these criteria. To serve these students, Solloway developed a course called The Art of Possibility and Mindfulness Practice. It had 3 major areas of focus: Dweck's mindset theory, mindfulness practice, and meditation. Students were required to participate in self-selected mindfulness practices once a week for 20 minutes, and to journal, first about this mindfulness experience, and second about one other experience of mindful awareness in an everyday context. Each student wrote up to 16 journal entries during their participation in the program. In this presentation, we report on what we're learning from these students about the growth of compassion. We'll proceed by describing our hypotheses, methods, instruments, and results. Then we'll close with a short discussion of the limitations and implications of our findings and some suggestions for next steps. Informed by the Western breath meditation tradition and 7 years of experience teaching students in Bloomsburg's Act 101 EOP program, we formulated several hypotheses. First, we hypothesized that over time, regular mindfulness practice increases students' level of awareness of key mindfulness constructs. Second, we hypothesized that some mindfulness constructs are easier to bring into awareness than others. We posited that the easiest constructs would be those that involve direct observations of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. We call these first-order constructs. We then posited second-order constructs, which involve awareness of others or awareness of differences between self and other. This group includes beliefs, relationships, and values. The final group, third-order constructs, includes areas of awareness that explicitly involve self-regulation relative to others or the external world, including emotional control, connecting with others, connecting with nature or a deity, and compassion itself. Our third hypothesis is that students' initial level of awareness of our targeted mindfulness constructs will predict growth in their awareness of compassion. Our fourth hypothesis is that the growth of students' level of awareness of key mindfulness constructs parallels growth in their awareness of compassion. And our fifth and final hypothesis is that the initial developmental level of students' conceptions of mindfulness constructs contributes to growth in their awareness of compassion. A total of 1,273 students are included in the current sample. These students participated in the program between 2012 and 2016. There were more female than male students, with 767 females and 503 males. Most participants, 783, identified themselves as African American, 231 as Caucasian, 177 as Latino, and 82 as other. All students did not take all of the assessments at all of the test times. For this reason, in the analyses that follow, varying numbers of students are included in particular analyses. We used 2 instruments to measure student performance. The first of these, the SMJ, or Solloway Mindfulness Journal, involved weekly written reflections on awareness of thoughts, emotions, body sensations, relationships, beliefs, values, control, connection, and compassion. The second assessment, the SMA, was originally built so we could address the question, does the developmental sophistication of students' understanding of mindfulness concepts affect the development of their mindfulness experience? The SMA is an open response cognitive developmental assessment that focuses on the sophistication of students' conceptions of emotion, awareness, control, insight, non-judgmentalness, and compassion. Journal entries were rated by Dr. Solloway on all 10 SMJ dimensions. They were rated on a 4-point scale from mentioned to described and reflected upon. We computed simple growth scores by subtracting time 1 ratings from time 16 ratings. To increase the sample size, if time 16 ratings were unavailable, we used time 15 ratings in the growth calculation. Paired samples t-tests comparing time 1 and time 16 ratings were all statistically significant, with t-values between 8.57 and 15.87. We plan more sophisticated analyses in the future in which missing values can be imputed and slopes and intercepts will be calculated. In fact, we are seeking a PhD candidate who would be interested in conducting an in-depth analysis of these data as part of his or her thesis. This slide shows growth trajectories for the first 6 SMJ constructs. As predicted in Hypothesis 1, awareness grows over time on all of the constructs. As predicted in Hypothesis 2, the first-order constructs, thoughts, emotions, and body sensations, were easiest at time 1, clustering between 2.1 and 2.5. But by time 8, awareness of thoughts jumped ahead, and awareness of emotions and body sensations began to grow more slowly. Again, as predicted in Hypothesis 2, starting ratings for awareness of relationships, beliefs, and values were second easiest and quite similar, between 0.8 and 1.5. But by time 8, ratings for relationships and beliefs were continuing to grow relatively rapidly, while ratings for values were growing more slowly. In fact, contrary to our expectations, the clusters for time 16 are thoughts, then emotion, body, relationships, and beliefs, and finally, values. The third-order constructs also behaved as expected at time 1, clustering between 0.00 and 0.50. But their curves quickly diverged, with control growing most rapidly, the 2 forms of connection next, and compassion growing most slowly. Also, please note that the R's for all 10 growth curves on these last 2 slides are strong or very strong. I'm drawing your attention to this because the strength of these curves provides some justification for our use of the rather simple preliminary forms of analysis that will follow. Now we move on to the SMA. In the SMA, the target constructs include emotion, awareness, control, insight, non-judgmentalness, and compassion. The assessment consists of 5 randomly assigned open response prompts. Test takers are asked to provide explanations and examples. For instance, they might be asked, what does it mean to consciously examine your life? Please explain what this means to you and provide an example from your own experience. Written responses are scored on the Lectica scale, a scale of increasing hierarchical complexity and abstraction, with evidence-based rubrics that are best thought of as ordered descriptions of learning sequences. The scorer selects a level description that is most like a given student's answer. Dr. Solloway personally conducted all of the scoring. Students took the SMA up to 4 times, but for this presentation we consider only time 1 scores. Time 1 scores ranged from 10.09 to 10.82. Before we look at tests of our remaining hypotheses, we want to be transparent about some interesting ethnicity and sex effects in this sample. For the SMJ, Across test times, Caucasian students performed between 0.13 and 0.63 of a level higher than African American and Latino students. All of these differences were statistically significant. Again for the SMJ, on average, females performed between 0.11 and 0.24 of a level higher than males. Once again, all of these differences were statistically significant. However, sex differences did not impact the overall trends reported here. There were no statistically significant differences between ethnic groups or sexes on the SMA. These results are consistent with previous findings for lectical assessments. Historically, scores on our scale are primarily impacted by SES and instructional quality. Ethnicity plays no role once SES has been taken into account. We cannot examine SES directly here, however, because we do not have access to specific SES data for this population. And unfortunately, we were unable to determine to what extent ethnicity impacted the following analyses because of the small subsample of Caucasian participants. We will now examine support for hypotheses 3 through 5. Hypothesis 3 held that students' level of awareness of key mindfulness constructs would contribute to growth in their awareness of compassion. A simple correlational analysis of the relation between growth in awareness of compassion and Time 1 awareness scores on the 10 SMJ constructs provides support for this hypothesis. All Time 1 scores for SMJ constructs predicted growth in awareness of compassion. Hypothesis 4 held that the growth of students' level of awareness of key mindfulness constructs parallels growth in their awareness of compassion. Correlations between growth in awareness of compassion and growth in awareness of the other 9 SMJ constructs provided only partial support for this hypothesis. Only the third-order SMJ constructs were positive correlates of growth in compassion. Hypothesis 5 held that the developmental level of students' initial conceptions of mindfulness constructs contributes to growth in their awareness of compassion. Interestingly, although Time 1 SMA score predicts growth on the SMJ's first-order and second-order constructs, it does not directly predict growth on any of the third-order constructs. However, when we employed stepwise regression models to examine which variables work together to predict growth in compassion, we did find an effect for SMA Time 1 scores. In Model 3, growth in awareness of compassion is predicted by 3 variables: SMJ Time 1 beliefs, SMJ Time 1 connection to nature or deity, and SMA Time 1 lectical score. Support for our 5 hypotheses varied. Analyses provided full support for Hypothesis 1. Students' journals revealed increasing awareness of all 10 rated constructs over the course of 2 semesters. Support for Hypothesis 2 was partial. Time 1 ordering of constructs was as predicted, but by Time 8 some construct orders had changed. Support for Hypothesis 3 was strong. Growth in awareness of compassion was predicted by all 10 of the SMJ Time 1 scores. Support for Hypothesis 4 was partial. Only growth in awareness of third-order constructs predicted growth in awareness of compassion. And finally, support for Hypothesis 5 was partial. Performance on the SMA at Time 1 predicted growth on the first and second-order SMJ constructs, but not on the third-order constructs. However, support for Hypothesis 5 was provided by a multiple regression showing that Time 1 SMA scores, along with Time 1 control scores and Time 1 belief scores, worked together to predict growth in awareness of compassion. Time 1 awareness and reflectivity on a range of constructs, all of which are easier than awareness of compassion, predicts growth in awareness of and reflection on compassion. The way in which students understand mindfulness constructs appears to play a role in the development of intentional attention as it manifests in awareness and reflectivity. In other words, cognitive development predicts the trajectory of growth in awareness and reflectivity. Combined, these results suggest that it may be possible to optimize mindfulness learning by measuring learners' initial levels of awareness and conceptual understanding, and engaging in activities that support the growth of both awareness and understanding. There are a number of weaknesses in this study and the current analysis. First, this analysis is preliminary. We have not yet conducted the sophisticated analyses that this kind of longitudinal data demands. Second, even when we have conducted more sophisticated analyses, it is inescapable that this is a convenience sample. And it's not only a convenience sample, it's a sample from a special population, which obviously impacts its generalizability. That said, the data collected for this project are very rich. They comprise written responses to over 5,000 assessments. We think it would be more than worthwhile to conduct more sophisticated analyses of these data, but we also would like to see this study replicated in other contexts to determine generalizability, ideally with randomly selected samples and controls. And of course, it would be desirable to explore the feasibility of customizing mindfulness instruction based on learners' initial levels of awareness and understanding. Thank you.